Yeah, and much like the circumstances of the off-reservation boarding schools, there was, they experienced, the students who went to these schools experienced a lot of abuse, whether it was psychological abuse, emotional abuse, spiritual abuse, or, sexual abuse. And I don't think people really account for that. Like if you're going, it's like fundamentally a different world, like different religion sometimes, even though a lot of Native families are Christian, but culturally it's so different. And I remember there was this case in my hometown of this very prominent white doctor who had fostered, several dozen kids. And it turned out that he was sexually, and most of them were indigenous. It goes without saying that, but he was sexually abusing them the entire time. And it was the weirdest thing because, it was also the site of the St. Joe's Indian School, which, many of my family went to, and there was a lot of sexual abuse, documented sexual abuse or accounts of sexual abuse at that school. And I was just thinking, it's like, these aren't solutions to what you pointed out are like clearly economic problems, like in terms of, you're just not only punishing the parents, but you're punishing the children for, nothing for no fault of their own, and exposing them to these situations with strangers sometime. And I think you even interviewed Sandy Whitehawk, who was somebody who was adopted out and herself experienced abuse at the hands of, her adopted family. And so it's not to say that all adoptive parents are this way or all foster situations are this way, but many are. And oftentimes it comes from other children who are in the system.
Yeah, and I think that that's like one of the things that's kind of really confusing about this case is that, these white foster parents are saying, ICWA is bad because it hurts Native kids and it's unfair to us because we wanted to adopt them. And if you want to talk about the harm that children are experiencing in foster care, there's a lot to talk about. We don't actually have very good data on abuse statistics, but in places where people have done intensive investigations, what people have found is really scary. One of these kids was in Texas foster care, and Texas is actually under a federal consent decree because their foster care system was so erratic and rife with abuse. Federal courts found that it was actually violating children's constitutional rights. And one of the things from Texas that was really shocking is that they actually didn't track, and they had no system to track child-on-child abuse. So if an older child had abused younger child, that child could just be moved around and still placed in the same home as younger children, and that abuse would just be happening on repeat. And they had no system to stop that from happening. And so I am incredulous that the problem with foster care that is deserving of the federal court's attention and that really needs to be solved right now for the benefit of children is that there's this law that makes it harder for non-Native foster parents to adopt Native kids. With everything that's happening in foster care, that's what needs to be the subject of like a multi-million-dollar lawsuit. I am incredulous of that.